All righty, good morning. Welcome to the town meeting program for May the 4th. May the 4th be with you, as they say. This is your local talk program brought to you by your local cell phone and wireless data provider, Cordova Wireless Communications, a much appreciated sponsorship. So we always have this time to get together when it's needed. It's an on-demand program, and there's been a fair amount of demand recently. So I'm glad we have the time slot and really appreciate the support of Cordova Wireless, not just for this show, but general operations as well. Because, as we've told you, we're not the kind of operation where there are government grants or anything other than, we are literally here because of the advertisers who keep the lights on and can't do anything without them. So even during these very weird times, that is very much appreciated. I should say especially in these weird times, very much appreciated. And today, it will not be me doing most of the talking, but actually state and local officials will start by, for anybody who didn't hear it Friday, we'll have the governor's remarks to kind of get us back up to speed of where things stand on the statewide level. And then we're going to play the city manager's remarks that were made Friday afternoon. And that'll sort of give us a reset. And there may be a few things to cover after that, we'll see. But for starters here, this was Governor Dunleavy's, I should say a portion of Governor Dunleavy's press conference this past Friday.
Talking about cases, these are updated numbers. Thursday, we have 9 new cases for a total of 364. No new deaths, still holding at 9. No new hospitalizations, 0. So total hospitalizations to date, 36. Total tests now up over 20,325. So we continue to be well within the top 10, if not better, in terms of testing per capita than all the other states. And recovered statewide, 254 recovered cases statewide. So our numbers are still doing pretty good. There was a question. By Becky Bohr the other day, I believe it was Wednesday, that said, will you start the next school year early to make up for lost time? And the answer to that is we're still working through that. The Commissioner of Education, Michael Johnson, is having discussions with school districts, and we're going to see how that pans out because, again, we don't know what this pandemic is going to do. We don't know if we're going to get a surge or another wave. And so we're working through a couple scenarios, a couple plans for school going into late summer, into the fall for next year. So we'll have more to say on that here in the near future once those discussions and those plans come together. So before we go on to Dr. Zink to talk about the cases, I just want to talk a little bit about the CARES Act. The CARES Act, that was the money put aside by Congress for the states to deal with mitigation of this virus. We've had an economic closure in the states across the U.S., including Alaska, health impacts, money for hospitals, money for schools. So I'm just going to talk a little bit, again, at the 30,000-foot level on the CARES Act. So the administration submitted an original plan to the legislature on April 21st. We submitted a revised plan today to the legislature. And their revised plan was based upon discussions we had with legislative leadership, communities, and businesses across the state of Alaska. The amount of money is $1.5 billion. It's considerable. And it's to be for COVID relief and mitigation of COVID across municipalities, healthcare, education, businesses, just about every sector in Alaska. And as we know, Alaskans, individual Alaskans, businesses, workers, and communities need relief. And what we want to do is have general categories so that when it goes out to the communities and goes out to municipalities and other recipients, that they use it in a manner that's consistent with the CARES Act, but also with what they need in terms of mitigation of the pandemic. The money, we have the money. It's now sitting with LB&A, Legislative Budget and Audit, and it can be distributed immediately as soon as they make a decision. And we all like to see it get out as quickly as possible, so it can be put to use now. And roughly, parts of the CARES Act is still being worked on by Legislative Budget and Audit. But we have about $50 million for nonprofits that can go out real quick. $331 million is being held in contingency for ongoing health response. We don't know where the pandemic is going to go. We don't know what additional equipment, if we need to set up additional makeshift hospitals, if we need to retain more healthcare staff, et cetera. We don't know where it's going to go, so we're going to retain some money in that fund to be able to deal with these healthcare responses as we go on through this pandemic into the spring, summer, and into the fall. The remaining CARES Act still needs to be approved. Again, today LB&A met and they approved $87 million for education, several million dollars for higher education, money for transportation, money for public safety, but they still need to work on some of the most critical components, and we're asking them to work as quickly as possible. And that's $569 million for municipal relief for our municipalities. Close to $290 million for small business relief grants. Money for airports still needs to be worked on. Money for the Whittier Tunnel needs to be worked on. Monies for fisheries and monies for addressing homelessness in this pandemic. And so they recessed their hearing until Wednesday to consider items not approved today. So again, we're asking the LB&A, the legislature, to act as quickly as possible so we can get relief out to these groups as soon as possible to help stabilize the economy and stabilize the finances of these entities. Again, things are looking good. No deaths, hospitalizations are no hospitalizations, and so our numbers are still holding. We said all along we're going to see more of an increase in the numbers, and we will, as we start to open up Alaska. I want to thank you once again for looking out for each other. I know there's a lot of personal responsibility that's going on in the state, just like there has been the last couple months since this pandemic came to us. And it's going to be, again, your actions that will get us through this. It's going to be your actions that will assist us in keeping the numbers down. We've got more PPE in. We built up our healthcare capacity. We are now going to watch how this phasing in of getting things back to normal is going to go. But I'm confident, again, with your help, things are going to look good. We'll be able to get more and more of our economy back up on step. And we're going to continue to have these discussions with you and give you the data, give you the information. And don't forget, you can go to the website, as Dr. Zinka said. There's great information on there. And any questions that you have, you can also send them through the website. We'll be more than happy to answer them and clarify anything that you might have. Also, again, we've sent off the legislature, LB&A, the Legislative Budget and Audit Committee. They have the CARES Act in their hands, and we're asking them to move as quickly as possible so that we can get relief to Alaskans as quickly as possible. We just ask that their actions occur sooner than later.
All right. Those were it was a compilation, really, of the governor's remarks at the beginning and end of the press conference Friday. I think they've gone to Monday, Wednesday, Friday on those now and are not doing them every day. And then the city has YouTube briefings on Tuesdays and Fridays now. And last Friday, the city manager sat in for the mayor, and here's what she had to say regarding the local position on things and local rules and so forth.
So in regards to testing, we have conducted 33 tests, of which 0 are positive and 5 are awaiting results. We now have testing capacity for over 1,000 tests, and we will be looking at some enhanced testing opportunities as the medical team reviews the availability of tests and looks at what we need to do in the near future. Earlier this week, we did have a council meeting, and there was a thorough discussion about the city's COVID response. We affirmed the face covering rule, which requires everyone in Cordova to wear a mask when not able to practice social distance of at least 6 feet. So when you're in a building, a public facility like the grocery store, the post office, you must wear a mask, because the assumption is that there's going to be other people in that building and you're going to need to wear the mask. If you're on the docks or in the harbor or on the streets, please wear a mask when you're going to be around other people. Otherwise, you are welcome to remove your mask. But please be advised that if someone comes nearby, you need to be able to pull out your mask and get it on quickly so that others will remain safe. We are really happy to see so many people wearing masks. There's been some really colorful ones. It's fun to see everyone's mask designs. So please keep up the good work. Wear those masks, protect yourself, protect others. The council is looking ahead at its next meeting next Wednesday at possible reopening of businesses in town. And right now we are discussing with the medical team and incident command with review by the state of Alaska and how we can successfully and safely open our community's businesses. The reopening will be driven by the state of Alaska, Reopen Alaska protocols, as well as the recommendations of our medical team. So please know that the discussions that will happen in the future about reopening Cordova will be based in science, based in the risks that our community has. And we will be very careful in our approach to that. But that will be discussed at the council meeting next Wednesday. I also want to provide a little bit of clarification around quarantine. That's a word that has many meanings. And within the context of this COVID response, the word quarantine means isolating yourself to the extent that you need to. And for any essential business worker, which means the entire fishing fleet, it means that when you're in town, you need to stay in your place of residence or on your vessel, except to perform critical infrastructure work and to take care of critical personal needs. So for those of you that are concerned about seeing the fleet arrive and people walking around town, they are allowed to do that. They are allowed to go get their vessels in the harbor. They're allowed to get groceries. They're allowed to go to the post office. They're allowed to do many, many things that are related to getting their vessels in the water and being prepared to provide critical infrastructure work. So there's a lot of confusion around that, but I just want to make sure everyone understands that just because someone's walking around town that just arrived doesn't mean that they're not allowed to do so. That said, when they're not doing their essential work, they need to remain in their place of residence, whether it's their vessel or another establishment. Let's see. I hope all of you will notice that we are doing a lot of things to ramp things up to prepare for the fleet, including sinks, hand washing sinks, and signage and flags for quarantine vessels. If any of you are in the harbor, you will see all of those things all ready to go. Again, we're getting things on the ground as quickly as we possibly can. In that light, we are going to have more boots on the ground pretty soon. We're going to have airport and harbor ambassadors that will make sure that people arriving in our community are getting the information they need to be safe in our community and also keep our community safe. We're also hiring custodians to clean and disinfect the city's public restroom facilities at the harbor, as well as the pool. The pool will be open strictly for showers and bathroom facilities to help the fleet out and make sure that those facilities are available for them. If you are interested in a job, we do have those positions online on the City of Cordova website. Applicants have to be 18 years of old and have a valid driver's license. And again, you can go to the cityofcordova.net website to get further information and click on the How Do I Find a Job tab. You can also call City Hall if needed. On another sidebar, there might be folks in our community that either need help with food or might have issues feeling uncomfortable, maybe need some mental health services. And so I want to share with you some opportunities and resources. The Cordova School District is sending home weekly lunches for all students, and the Cordova Community Medical Center has opened its senior lunch program to those over 55. Whereas before it was 60 or above. So I think CCMC is currently serving about 70 citizens daily, which is a wonderful thing. Native Village of Eac is serving the Native community through the use of their food bank and elderly care services. And the Salvation Army is preparing community food boxes on a monthly basis and have jumped from feeding about 40 families per month to 70 families a month. And they're getting more resources as well from other places. The food bank is. So I want to thank everyone who's made these options available to our community and encourage those of you who do need services to please contact any of those resources. So in closing, the next City of Cordova update is scheduled for Monday. Tune your radio to KCDV FM 100.9 or KLAM 1450 at 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 8 p.m. And remember that all of the information that we're discussing is available on our Cordova COVID-19 website at covid19.cityofcordova.net. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'm hoping for a little bit more sunshine. And don't forget to wear a mask when you go out in public. Thank you very much.
City Manager Helen Howarth there, bringing us up to speed on the city's requests and desires for how we go forward here. And again, the best local asset for the most up-to-date information tends to be the city's COVID-19 website, covid19.cityofcordova.net. And if you want to follow up on what the state's doing, it's covid19.alaska.gov. And it would be good, particularly to review the city's documents, the most recent emergency order especially. That's Emergency Order 2020-5, and this is the document that continues to evolve as new guidance comes down, or it's the summary of the city rules, which in some cases are a little tighter than the state. As you heard the city manager mention, right now the businesses that are called quote unquote non-essential were allowed to begin opening many places in the state last week, but cities had extra authority to maintain controls if they thought that it was necessary, which thus far the majority of the city council, actually not a big majority. Remember, these votes were 4-3 last week on whether our local non-essential businesses should stay closed or not. And that is a situation that could possibly change this week. We don't know for sure until the meeting occurs, but there's supposed to be a meeting Wednesday, a special meeting on that subject, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Not at noon like they've been doing with most of them, but they have a regular council meeting Wednesday at 7, and very likely, that could still change, but very likely a special meeting on the subject of reopening, limited now. Again, remember, limited reopening of non-essential businesses. It would not be business as usual. I know some people have a tendency to think that for whatever reason, that slightly opening the businesses means just opening the floodgates, and that's very much not true. All that would happen if the city decides to take away its extra restrictions and go with the state guidance, all that means is that then local businesses could operate in the limited fashion allowed by the state. And again, for a restaurant, for example, if a restaurant was allowed to start taking dine-in service again, that restaurant could only do that by reservation. They couldn't take any walk-ins. They could only operate at a maximum of 25% of their seating capacity, and tables with people sitting at them would have to be a minimum of 10 feet apart. Plus, people would not be allowed to sit together unless they're from the same household. Now, obviously, restaurants can't police that beyond just asking. Which, I mean, if I was a restaurant owner and you're taking and you can only do things by reservation, I would say to the person, okay, well, when do you want to come in? And how many will be in your party? And are all of those people in your party from the same household? That would be the restaurant being able to cover its liability. And, of course, at local restaurants, people probably know whether folks are from the same household or not. But people who are not for the same household, if you work at, say, you work at one of our banks and you have a friend who works at the other bank or at a different business and you don't live together in the same house, you're not supposed to go eat together at a restaurant for dine-in, because nobody that doesn't live in the same household is supposed to be within 6 feet of each other. So that's just an example for restaurants. The state guidance allows salons to have a one-to-one customer to personal care person ratio. So if a salon, for example, a place to get a haircut had one chair, then that means only one person at a time can be in that area. There can't be a waiting room. And again, it can't be walk-in either. It has to be by reservation. Which, again, if it was me, I'd be saying, now, have you tested positive or do you have any symptoms of COVID? If the person says no, okay, fine, you can come in Thursday at 1 or whatever. But if they have, then, I would ask them to wait. And then, again, a multitude of other restrictions. So if things do begin to open, if the city decides to move forward with having the non-essential businesses start to reopen, it's still going to be under the very strict, limited state mandates. And then our rules for travel, too. It was interesting. I had a side conversation with somebody about graduation. And they were, they know that knew that I had been reading these rules a lot and reached out to see what I thought. Now, obviously, I'm not a city official. I'm just, I read a lot. And they were asking about graduation. Now, what if you have a graduate who's got aunts and uncles in Wasilla that want to come to Cordova for this modified graduation? And if you're not familiar with that, Cordova is going to basically have a virtual graduation. What happens is the student is going to walk into, I think it's the gymnasium, on camera, walk in, pick up their diploma, walk out, and then there's maybe a photo opportunity or something. Again, I don't remember all the specifics, but it's a very isolated kind of thing, and it's only one family at a time. But where it gets interesting now is that the quarantining rules still apply for any family members that come in from outside. And this is where it gets kind of weird as you try and interpret the rules. But if you were going to go with a pretty strict interpretation, if you had an aunt or uncle from outside Cordova fly in, those people are subject to a 14-day quarantine and should not be leaving wherever it is they're going to stay, which sucks a bunch when you're talking about, sort of once-in-a-lifetime thing like graduation. And I don't know, if any special considerations are going to be made in that situation. But if, again, absent any extra guidance, family, just because people are in the same family doesn't mean that they're supposed to be within 6 feet of each other And this would even go now if you've got a local family, mom, dad, and graduate, and an aunt and uncle that live in Cordova but are not in the same household. Really, mom, dad, and grad should stay 6 feet apart from the aunt and the uncle if you're going to go by the strict interpretation of what Cordova's emergency order says. And even more uncomfortable is the fact that really an aunt or uncle or whoever that comes in from another community is supposed to be quarantined for 14 days or until they leave, whichever is shorter. And those people that come in from outside, remember, are not supposed to go out for anything that isn't essential working. And so the tragedy of that is that really those visiting family members should not be leaving the house or the hotel. About all they'd be able to do under the rules now, and I'm not trying to make a moral judgment of any type here, just looking at the rules, those people that come in should go from the airport to wherever they're going to stay, at somebody's home or a hotel room, and stay in that location until either 14 days have passed or they go home. And, just to twist the knife a little more, if the visiting aunt and uncle, let's say, are staying in the home of the family that lives here with mom, dad, and grad, and you can't keep the aunt and uncle isolated from the rest of the house, because remember, that's part of the rule too. If you can't keep the aunt and uncle separated in the house from mom, dad, and grad, then mom, dad, and grad have to begin a 14-day quarantine. If all of those relatives want to be together, the out-of-town relatives and the local relatives, if they want to spend time all together in the house, then that means that the mom, dad, and grad, the locals, would also have to start a 14-day quarantine. So, it was interesting batting this around with the person, and the person I was chatting with said, really probably what we ought to do is, as hard as it is, just ask for those extended family members to do the virtual graduation and not try to fly in for it. Now, again, in saying all of this, I'm not suggesting that anybody do anything one way or the other. This is not JR saying, you should tell your family to stay away. It's not that at all. All I'm doing here is pointing out what's in the city's documentation. And I would say that if you are concerned about that or have thoughts about it, that it would be a good thing to raise with the school administration or the city council. It's conceivable that exemptions or relaxing of some of those standards could occur, or the people in charge of setting this policy might say, as hard as it is, the fact is that having extended family coming in for graduation puts the town at the same risk for starting to have cases of coronavirus that the influx of population for the fishing industry does. And we really can't say we've got to take extreme preventative measures in one area and then relax them in another area. Because the whole idea is to try as hard as possible to stay at zero. Or if we can't stay at zero, to absolutely minimize it. So again, I don't bring it up to recommend anybody behave a certain way or not. I'm just raising it because the issue exists, and it might be one that you would want to talk to school administrators or the city council about to see how the rules apply to possible extended family that want to be physically present for a graduation, how all that's going to work. Should you recommend that these family members not try to come in, as difficult as that is, or is there some kind of a safe compromise? And I'll tell you for myself that while it would be heartbreaking to not be physically present, I personally would probably go ahead and follow the rules. But that's just me. I'm not going to tell anybody else what to do. And likewise, it's not part of my personality to judge if people decide that's ridiculous, family should be able to be present, so family should be present. That's each individual's decision to make. I think doing that would put people at risk for being cited and possibly fined and possibly bringing the disease here. But that's nothing more than my opinion, like I said. So that's about it, I think, for today. We're going to have our briefings in the 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. hours. And, of course, everything we do COVID-related goes on the YouTube channel, thanks to Robbie's technological prowess, creating that and populating that with stuff. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, that's free. If you want to click the notifications button, that's free. And then what will happen is, I guess you get told anytime we put up a new item. So this talk show will go there as soon as possible after it's done, as will our daily briefing with usually the mayor, but could end up being somebody else. We've been talking about diversifying that a little bit. The town meeting program is brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications. Again, we thank them very much and all of the advertisers, really, that help us keep the lights on and the transmitters running, because we cannot do that without their continued support. We wish you all the best. Let me remind you again, too, we had a very good show Friday with our local mental health professionals. So if you've been feeling some extra anxiety or depression in the midst of this whole thing that you weren't expecting, have a listen to that show. It's on the YouTube channel. It's the one we did May 1st. So look for the Friday, May 1st edition of Town Meeting, and you can hear that show. There were a lot of good recommendations made in there for parents that have been thrust into the new role of teaching, for folks who are maybe experiencing depression or anxiety as a result of the pandemic for the first time, people that haven't had those things before but now are experiencing that, and also how to cope with some of the extreme behavior that's occurred, from, like masking is always the great example. You've got people who will give you the finger if you're wearing a mask and saying you're being a coward and you're being unpatriotic, to people on the other side of the thing that if you're not wearing a mask, they automatically assume and yell at you that you don't care about the community and you're just trying to kill people. It's crazy, but it's happening. And our local mental health professionals addressed some of that in this show. So it was a really good show. And I hope that if you didn't hear it Friday, that you'll go to youtube.com/Cordova TV. That's our site, and have a listen to that show. youtube.com/Cordova TV, the May 1st, Friday town meeting talk show. So, again, take care, be safe. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Town Meeting.